Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our September 19th Planning Board meeting. And I'll call us to order, and I will begin by reading the roll. John Chris, myself, present. Sue?
Here.
Phil?
Present.
Neil?
Present.
Mike?
Here.
Mark is excused this evening, and Matt.
Present.
And alternate members, Zach is not present. Michael Bouchard? Brad?
Yep.
Molly is not currently present, and Jason Ninos is also excused this evening. And so with that, we have one member of the full board who is not present. So, Michael, I will seat you as a voting member this evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so first up, we have our review of minutes from our September 5th meeting. Thank you for the, I don't know if it's you or, yeah. This is you?
These ones, yes,
Okay.
but
Thank you for the
Avery is-
thorough minutes.
Yeah, but Avery is back, working in town hall, to the student who was working with us a little bit last year. So she'll be helping with some of these as well going forward. We're glad to have her back.
Not hearing any objection, any amendments, I'll move we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. So the minutes are approved as written. Thank you. Communications received, Joseph.
Yes, thank you. So a few things, and some of it did not come in time to be included in the email packet, but it is on the table here. So first, we have a letter from Delaney Carrier with regards to the Mountain Village Charter School continued compliance hearing, and we can, that's on the agenda for later as well, but generally, it's a status update and a request for the board to continue the compliance hearing again until November. Delaney goes on to say, we will be making a decision this month on whether to move forward with the project as currently described. Thank you for your patience, Delaney. There's also a piece of legislation there that was recently signed. We did allude to it a little bit at a prior meeting. That is HB 1400. So that was signed. The provisions in there are now in effect. Some of them are not in effect until a later date, but that is the RSA change that, among other things, puts some limitations on the parking requirements towns can impose on residential developments. It also does a variety of other things, including expanding the 79E tax credit program. It also provides an option for town meeting to authorize the governing body in town meeting towns to adopt zoning changes, and it requires planning boards to consider alternative parking solutions. So, those provisions that require towns to change their zoning, there is a little bit of time to comply with those. So we're not out of compliance yet, but there will be some pieces that will need to be changed, particularly for developments of 10 or more units, multifamily developments. Towns cannot require more than 1.5 spaces per unit as a minimum, which is kind of the major piece that the town doesn't currently comply with, but
Well, it's 10 or more units, which you don't allow anyway.
in a development though, so it.
Oh, in a development,
Yep,
okay, got
yep.
it.
So that, just hot off the presses today, is the New Hampshire Municipal Association and State Department of Business and Economic Affairs Guide to Changes in Planning and Zoning Laws for 2024. Most of these have no action required for the town. Most of them are, don't conflict with anything in our zoning. As far as The review that I've been able to give it currently, the only thing that there's potential is that section which has to do with parking for residential uses, but the other things aren't necessarily directly in conflict with any zoning that the town has currently. There's also a provision related to home-based childcare, which the town already allows as a home occupation, but if we didn't, we would have to change that. We allow it pretty blanketly as a home occupation, so no issue there. I also included a recent article that was in the New Hampshire Municipal Association's September magazine, which relates to subdivisions on Class 6 roads. I thought it was interesting and informative, and while it doesn't directly relate to the previous application we had, this article deals more with Class 6 roads when they're not proposed to be improved and reclassified to a Class 5. So it is covering a bit of a different scenario, but still a lot of Class 6 roads in Plymouth with a lot of lots on them, worth refreshing on that article. I thought it was pretty informative and topical, so I thought I would include that just for the board's information.
All right, so for action for that, I guess we have some mandatory zoning amendments to write and hopefully pass, just to keep us in compliance. Thank you for that, and all the other information. All right, so next up, we have applications and public hearings. The first one of which is a continuation of a compliance hearing for Mountain Village Charter School, and I've been recusing myself from these, and Phil has been leading most of these, so for continuity, we could turn to Phil again. I would love for Sue to take these up at some point.
I will.
And
I'll do it.
Look forward to you in an active role as vice chair.
I'll do it.
But since, for continuity's sake, I guess we'll turn to Phil in this one.
Well, I'm happy to cede it to Sue. Like, I think it's fine that, or do you have concerns about changing who chairs the section while you're at it?
I don't think it really matters.
Okay.
Um,
If you're up, Sue.
I'm going to briefly recuse myself.
Okay. This is the continuance of a compliance hearing for Mountain Village Charter School to review progress towards completion of the conditions of approval placed upon a site plan review application from Mountain Village Charter School to develop a 3-building educational facility serving approximately 120 students in grades 1 through 8, along with associated site and drainage improvements on parcel 213-031 on Tenny Mountain Highway. And it started, January 18th was when they got their conditional approval on the site plan. And some of the conditions that were noted, they needed to update the plan to provide for safe, separated pedestrian walkways between the parking area and the school buildings, as well as to provide lighting suitable for the area. Then the board agreed to have this requirement as a conditional approval. On 4/18, at the meeting, the applicant advised that the conditions had not been met, and several of the other conditions that had been placed on them had not been met. Then they came back in for another meeting, and 4/18, 7/18, they did a continuance of the compliance. Again, the conditions were not met, and it was continued to tonight. So there's really no new information with the exception of this letter that we received tonight. So the items on the board that they were given for the compliance for the approval of the application have not been met. So I guess we just need to decide if we can give them another continuance until November while they make the decision in accordance with this letter that they sent us. Unless there's any discussion that anyone wants, or if anyone has.
I just want a minute to read it, and then I'll,
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead. okay with it, Mike?
Yeah, I just, I'm gonna ask Joseph. Joseph, have you had much dialogue besides this very short letter with them, with Frank or anybody?
No, nothing beyond this, except that I did respond and just pass along some of the information that I included in the memo as well about the need to request an extension if it's gonna go beyond January. And Delaney responded that he understood that, but no other communication about any more of the substantial aspects of the project.
So we're still within that year of time where they can meet the conditions?
Yeah, that expires January 18,
Yep.
25.
I'll make a motion that we, in response to the request from Delaney Carrier, I would make a motion that we grant the extension until our November hearing. We need a date, don't we?
Yep.
It would be November 21.
Yikes.
Is that Thanksgiving?
It's the, no, it's the week before Thanksgiving.
Is it?
Yep.
All right, to November 21.
I would second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Abstain? So we've got an extension until 11/21/24.
Sue? John, are you unrecusing yourself now?
Thank you, Sue. Okay, so up next, we have a site plan review application for 113 Beach Hill Road, 208060. It's an application from Brandon Hiltz on behalf of BH Holdings LLC for site plan review approval to construct an approximately 5,000 square foot, 5-bay garage for heavy-duty truck and equipment repair, along with approximately 1,200 square foot of office. A large gravel parking area will also be created, and the garage will be accessed via an existing gravel driveway. This as a reminder to everyone about the process here. On a new application, we first have to, hear from the applicant and a little bit about the project, and then determine if the application is complete based on the information we've received, and that it meets our checklists or waivers and so forth. And if it is complete, then we can move on to a discussion of approval, and whether or not that's warranted, and having a public hearing, and the rest of that process. So you should all have some information about this in your packets. Would the applicant or a representative of the applicant like to come and say a few words about this project, perhaps?
And in the meantime, I would, apologies to the board, there is a slight error in the first page of the staff report. So it is not accurate that Beach Hill Road is a state highway. It is actually a town road. So apologies for that, but it is under the town highway department jurisdiction.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the applicant who would like to speak?
Yeah, I don't, you got it covered pretty good.
Okay.
If you have any questions, you have to
Okay, fair enough. If we do, I would ask you to come up to the podium and use the mic. It helps us with our recordings and so everyone can hear. All right, so we all have the application here. And so we're looking to determine if it is complete. Are there any questions or concerns about that? Can I ask a question, actually?
Don't need to go up there and answer.
Yeah, please, yeah. If you could clarify under what use this would fall under in our zoning, just so we have a sense of
think
I mean,
it's,
to see how it fits into our zoning and whether or not it can be approved, we have to have a specific use, and I could see a couple kind of fitting here, and I'm just kind of curious how you see this.
I think it's classified vehicular sales and repairs.
Okay, thank you.
Are you okay with that assumption?
No, I thought we wrote that on the application, but maybe we missed it.
Does
but-
say it,
Or does,
top of
okay.
page, second bullet, H2.
Are there any waivers?
Nothing that has been received. A few items indicated in the staff report that, a few checklist items indicated in the staff report, but nothing that has been requested at this point.
And so you have, one of the requirements in our regulations for a new application or a new use, as well as in general, is that you would do a stormwater plan. And I'm curious about, I don't believe I see one.
I didn't think there was enough impact to warrant that.
Okay.
We're not adding any driveway, it's existing, the parking area is very small, it's just mostly building.
Typically, even in existing construction, 5,000 square feet,
1,000, yeah.
which I think we're over with the office space. The building itself is 5,000, right?
Over the 5,000, but under the 20,000 of disturbance.
Yeah. I
We're
thought-
not redirecting any runoff, so I didn't see it as necessary, but if you want it, I can, you know, get that.
I mean, for me at least, especially considering you are gonna do vehicular work there,
Yeah.
which could involve, I mean, substances of various sorts, that, are involved with that. And that could be a sensitive issue that I would want a little bit of, better understanding of how that's all gonna be handled and controlled, and especially with potential, you know, even unanticipated runoff just by having all this development there. For me at least, that would, seem appropriate, but I'll leave it to the rest of the board.
Wouldn't that be covered with spill kits if there was ever a spill? I mean, you wouldn't have anything, you wouldn't build anything for a potential spill. You would have a kit for cleanup.
No, I mean, I would assume you're not just gonna be dripping oil everywhere. I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to imply that. But still, there's a lot of activity that, and I do believe you have a stream running through and, other potential impacts on the land. And usually a project of this size would have, a, drainage study.
Yeah.
How much area are you gonna disturb?
I think it's on the print, I think it was 18.6 total. Small gravel area and then the building.
18,700.
What's that?
18,000 square feet?
Yeah.
With gross building area of 6,200.
The driveway's existing, so we're just adding from that to the building. So it's just that gravel area in the building.
So that includes your parking area too?
Yeah.
The building is 5,000 square feet. And then the
6,200.
6,200, and the office building is 5,000 additionally.
Shop building's 5,000, office is 1,200.
Okay,
But they're
thank you.
connected, it's one building.
Okay, thank you.
Now, will you be keeping equipment and stuff out there? You'll be parking all your equipment, so will there be parking for all that?
We're not gonna build a parking lot for that, no.
So you will be having equipment out there?
Most of the time, the equipment's on a job, it's not in the yard.
So what about in the winter months? I mean, you probably will have it there then.
I wish it came back to the yard then, but we just freeze.
I mean, one thing in that regard to be careful of in terms of the use of the property, and we can talk about this perhaps later on in the process as well, if there is going to be a good amount of storage of stuff there, we have to make sure we don't reach the threshold where it becomes, by by our definitions, a junkyard. And it might not, and it's just worth considering if you're, depending on the amount of storage and how sedentary it is and so forth. And hopefully it wouldn't, but it's worth just keeping in mind, just to make sure you don't hit that threshold.
No, I'm just kind of looking.
You may have been going somewhere different with this.
No, well, I'm just looking at the things that were not checked off on the application. The erosion control plan was one, stormwater drainage was one. The impact analysis. I feel like there could be a pretty good impact on this property. 2 neighbors to the town road, I think you abut the town, another town of Campton.
Yep.
So, I mean, I don't know if we should take them into consideration. If there is equipment there, I mean, there's just a lot of things that could go on.
Yeah.
It is agricultural, so there's that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so one of the questions there is that part of the acceptance, or is that, I know it's on the checklist, or do we want to deal with that later, or, it's a question, it's a very legitimate question.
Yeah, I just.
And it is part of our checklist. Yeah.
Well, that's it. It's part of the checklist.
Yeah.
And waivers. I would have liked to have seen some waivers, I think.
Mhm.
I'm in agreement with Sue. You said basically what I was thinking.
Do you have any plans for signage out front by the road?
I think it could be an impact on that Beach Hill going into, that's a town road. Just looking at the traffic that is gonna,
Yeah.
especially if it's a repair place.
You're gonna reconstruct the bridge? Isn't there a bridge across the stream? Or a culvert?
There's a culvert.
So
So it's-
is it adequate for your needs?
For now it is. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
someday we'd have to look at that, but I don't see a need right away.
It's just a single lane dirt over a plastic culvert.
I will ask if you want to speak, please come up to the mic and identify yourself, and,
I wasn't sure when we would get a
yeah.
turn.
And we're not doing public hearing yet at this point. We really just want to hear from the applicant. But, yeah.
Are the 6 parking spaces for employees that'll be there, or I'm just picturing that if it's 6 parking spaces for employees plus repair vehicles, will those take up more than 6 spots, or is that just for employees?
Possibly. I don't really have a designated parking spots for people. I mean,
Yep. Yeah, okay.
usually when they're getting repaired, they're in the shop, not out in the parking spot. We don't do that much repair. We don't have them like lined up waiting.
Right, it's not like 50 vehicles are stacked up and
No, no,
sitting
no.
for weeks to go in or come out.
Yeah, no, that's not, we have no intent of doing that.
This is primarily to service your own construction equipment for your own company, not,
Yeah,
and then,
that's about 60% of what we do,
Mm.
my own stuff.
so are you planning to do repairs for other people's equipment on this site as well?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And just as a reminder, we should be like trying to figure out at this point, before we get too deep, whether or
Whether
not
it's
it's
Complete.
complete. Whether or not we can accept it, A, without waivers, or B, without some of these particular.
My question was more about the volume of impact.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
like meeting Sue's concern,
Yeah, kind
Okay.
of trying to flesh out that concept, I guess.
fair enough.
I am a little concerned that is there a stormwater management plan with the application?
No, we didn't do that. I didn't think there was enough impact for that, but like I said, if you do.
There's a 20,000 square foot limit on the erosion control plan. But I believe, so I read it, the site plan regulations do require a stormwater management plan regardless of the size of the impact. Differentiating between stormwater management and sediment and erosion control.
May I ask Joseph a question?
You may.
Joseph, can you help explain the difference between like the 100-year floodplain and the severity versus the 500-year floodplain. I've heard different things where a 500-year flood or hazard, if you will, isn't necessarily really considered much substance compared to the 100-year and the regulations that you see on that.
Yeah, that's pretty much spot on. So the 100-year is actually the regulatory floodplain. So when we're talking about, the zoning ordinance has specific restrictions and limitations on how new buildings in the 100-year floodplain have to be built. And that's out of that's sort of to comply with the National Flood Insurance Program. In order to be a part of that, for the town, the zoning, or some other building regs, but in Plymouth it's through zoning, has to put certain limitations on what can be built or how building can take place in the 100-year floodplain. The 500-year floodplain is delineated, but we don't impose any specific restrictions related to building or development in that zone. It is a much more unlikely, I mean, it's possible, but it's a much more unlikely for those areas to flood, and that's not what the FEMA sort of National Flood Insurance Program requires towns to regulate. Towns are required to regulate on the 100-year.
Okay.
And the floodway as well, which is, the direct.
So you see a lot less restrictions on the 500-year, where you start to hear what generally is talked about in public is the 100-year. Okay.
When we're talking about like the town regulating building above the flood elevation, or having flood-proofed lower levels, things like that, those requirements come into place for the 100-year.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Isn't all that around the stream?
It would appear so.
So it doesn't actually affect the property except for within the wetland setbacks anyway.
Like you have a little bit of 100-year along the stream and
In the stream bed.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yes, they had,
Right. And then some of the other areas in the 500-year, which doesn't impose the regulations. Okay. Thank you.
Are you gonna have fuel tanks?
no, not tanks. We'll have one tank that's enclosed with a roof on it.
Above ground tank?
And it's less than the required, I think it's 560 gallons, smaller than that. Is it 560? There's a regulation on that. I don't remember.
So in addition to the elevation of the schematic for the steel building, are there any architectural plans for the wood frame detachment?
I don't think I've drawn
Sketches.
those yet, no.
Number 16 on the application says the location, size, and design and illumination of proposed signs, and there's an X that says it is in here. I'm not finding it. Can you help me find it?
You say signs?
It says number 16, location, size, design, and illumination of proposed signs.
There is none.
There is none. Okay, so there's an X next to that, but it's not actually in there. Okay.
Yeah, there's no signs, so. I
Okay.
think it said that I was
That's
supposed
correct,
to
because
note.
there's nothing proposed.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I understand. Sorry. He doesn't have to have a sign.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So I guess the question that we have at this point is, A, do we want to waive some of these requirements like the stormwater and such? And B, if we do we want to require a written waiver request as we normally ask for?
I personally don't think we should waive it.
Okay.
I think that the impact, I mean, there's some really important things here. This is an important, there's a lot going on here, and it is in the agricultural zone. It's a proposed, we don't really have something to call it. He has to throw it into this category, so because that's what we've got. So, I kind of would like to see those things. That's my opinion.
I kind of feel the same way, our site plan plat requirements also indicate that, you know, architectural elevations or a view or a photograph of all buildings indicating their dimensions and surface treatment. So the schematic of the building is good for showing the bulking, but, you know, it'd be nice to see kind of, at least a sketch of the exterior surface treatment and elevation.
Isn't it on there, the steel plan?
The structure, is there more than this?
There should have been 5 or 6 pages that went with that.
Maybe we only got the first. But would that include the wood frame structure too, or is that still to be designed?
No, well, I just need to draw it. It's just a addition of that, just
Okay.
smaller.
Okay.
I think we may have structural plans for the steel building. I think that might be, is that what the structural set?
I think there's a page that shows the sidings. It's just metal siding.
Okay.
It's not
And how about the wood frame part? Is that just kind of gonna be?
Match.
Yeah. And honestly, it's not gonna be visible from the road anyway, is it?
a, oh, that's
No,
kind
it's
of the
not.
idea.
No.
I don't wanna be visible.
Right. I'm less concerned about the visual impact if it's gonna be set back from the road.
Yeah.
If he's disturbing less than an acre of land, stormwater pollution prevention plan is not required. But I think we should have some kind of erosion control plan.
The erosion control plan is, we specify that specifically in our site plan regulations, that if it's under 20,000 square feet, it's not required.
I mean, we can draw a silt fence around the perimeter of the construction if you want, but
You can do what? I didn't hear, sorry.
we could draw a silt fence around the area of disturbance.
Oh, I see, okay.
And that's really all you have for that. It's such a small area.
Under our submission requirements, under 4J, erosion control plan, which meets the standard design standards, if it's over 20,000 square feet, or if there's a construction of a road.
Well, we also have
Street.
new impervious surface.
But the total disturbance is 18,000?
18.7, I think it says.
18.7.
We have 5,000 for, like, the building and for a new plan and a new development, can you confirm, Joseph, is 5,000 or is it 0 for, like, is it anything for a new development?
Yes, so I did copy here into the page 3 of the staff report, so, sediment and erosion control plan, this is, what's that? Article 18O. Stormwater, sediment and erosion control and stormwater management, plan is required for all construction activities that result in changes to grading and stormwater flow. Sediment and erosion control plan, stormwater management plan should include use of low-impact development, et cetera. And then there is minimum requirements for new development, which goes on to describe the stormwater measures shall be taken to control the post-development peak runoff rate so that it does not exceed pre-development runoff for 2, 10, 25-year design storm, and so forth.
For our regulations, we are supposed to have this.
And stormwater pollution prevention, which you mentioned, Neil, and you can probably speak better, that's a EPA requirement, right? So
Right.
that's above and beyond our, or sort of parallel to our
Right.
regulations.
Okay. Yeah, so 5,000 square feet of impervious area of the structure would be trigger for the stormwater management plan.
Or with the two separate pieces of it, actually 6,200, I guess.
Yep.
Um,
So would it even trigger it if since he's disturbing less than 0.2% of the entire lot?
Because of the developed part itself, he's triggering it, yes.
Yeah.
Regardless of percentage of the entire lot, yeah.
How much it is?
Yeah.
Can you re-pinpoint for me exactly, are we looking at number 6 on page 3 of the memo? That says for proposed redevelopment projects that disturb more than 20,000 square feet or adds more than 5,000 square feet of impervious area to an existing, is this an existing developed parcel? Is that what this is considered? No. So we're looking at minimum requirements for new development specifically.
Mhm.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's got a building on it,
It does?
isn't that?
There's an old farmhouse on the,
Oh, yes, there
She didn't
is.
subdivide anything.
not
But in
developed
terms of
area.
this use, this is definitely a new development.
Okay,
I would, in my interpretation at least.
What,
Just in
interesting.
current use?
Is the,
I have no idea.
Is the property in current use?
have to look, I think probably.
So you'll have to remove some of that.
Yeah, but I mean,
Can't do that until after construction.
the town will deal with that when it goes.
Yeah, I just was curious.
I gotta build it first.
That field is pretty level, isn't it?
Fairly level. It slopes, it all slopes towards the, stream.
Towards the stream.
Yeah, downhill towards the old fairgrounds.
Should be some kind of perimeter control for runoff.
Well, we would do something anyway, but it doesn't require a plan because we're under the 20,000 feet. We would still install silt fence just while we're building, but
My understanding is that our regulations do require that we actually have some kind of plan in place.
So you're interpreting this as minimum requirements for new development?
I think it is, I mean,
Yeah.
the fact that it's another unrelated structure on the property, I don't think means this is not a new development.
It's certainly a new commercial development on an existing
Yeah.
lot with a single residence.
And with a stream right there, that could
Yeah.
carry stuff off.
yeah,
Especially, it seems important to actually hold to our regulations. I would think.
I would agree.
So if we're not going to accept this as complete now, seeking more information, is there other information we'd like to request if we're going to ask the applicant to come back?
I'd like the impact analysis.
Specifically,
Yeah, I was thinking, can we
Well,
define
We've got a
that?
town next door. I think we should at least notify them, find out.
so.
What their thoughts are.
That would be-
There's a do we need to, are you moving that this is a development of regional impact and we should notify the abutting town?
It's gonna affect the region.
And, well, there are certain, I guess there's a checklist for development of regional
What-
impact.
Okay, so what is
And,
that?
Joseph, can you re-enlighten us? I'm forgetting the exact checklist at this point.
Yep, no worries. I have this, let me just 1 second here. But yeah, so the process for development of regional impact, if the board makes a finding that that a proposed development is a development of regional impact, there is a process that we would have to follow. So before the board can take any action, we would need to proceed to notify the abutting town and the Regional Planning Commission. So if such a finding was made, we would have to basically continue the hearing to allow that to happen. But the 5 factors that are defined in statute, including but not limited to relative size or number of dwelling units compared with existing stock, proximity to the borders of a neighboring community, transportation networks, anticipated emissions such as light, noise, smoke, odors, or particles, proximity to aquifers or surface waters which transcend municipal boundaries, or shared facilities such as schools and solid waste facilities are the suggested factors to consider in deciding if something is a development of regional impact.
And so, for example, like someone putting something low impact near a border does not necessarily trigger regional impact. But if it seems like it's higher impact near a border, that would.
Which is not higher, but.
Yeah, it's a 75-acre lot, correct?
yeah, 76.
That's-
5 acres, are you moving your existing location for your trucks to this new one from Route 3?
Yes.
It's,
I would say that, there may be proximity to surface waters, but I think the surface waters flow away from the abutting town, not toward it. So I wouldn't think that would be a concern for me.
Okay.
There was a recent, I would advise when the board is ready to make a formal vote one way or the other, because there's some recent court cases suggesting that it's important that the board has a formal decision. The the statute does say any doubt concerning development of regional impact should be resolved by a determination that something is a regional impact. So if the board is unsure but doesn't vote yes or no, the courts would likely consider that the board should have found it was a regional impact.
Interesting.
Although
Up or down vote, the board can,
a majority vote that it's not would be no doubt.
correct.
Yeah.
So my feeling is, since it's not gonna, have the impact to the town with, it's hidden, it's not in view of the road, it's not gonna impact, schools, it's not gonna impact, the number of people coming and going. Could have 75 homes on that or more, but, I don't see it as a regional impact. So I'm willing to make a motion unless, I'd like to make a motion that it would not be a regional impact, just because it, or make a motion it is not a regional impact.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
I'm not questioning whether it's a regional impact or not, but I'm aware that there's heavy traffic flow on Beach Hill Road, and I know that much of it is from Campton. And there has to be some concern about the fact that the solid waste facility has heavy trucks and heavy traffic. And it's in close proximity to where he will have his entrance.
Well, that particular part of it, as opposed to the Campton part, wouldn't necessarily be a regional impact. That's within Plymouth. The Campton traffic is a concern,
Well,
potentially.
Um,
I mean, in terms of regional impact, it might be a concern for us in Plymouth,
Right.
the solid waste traffic.
I'm thinking about the congestion between the entrance to the solid waste facility and the traffic coming down Beach Hill Road, and the traffic moving in and out of his facility.
I still
I'm
think
not
that,
saying it's a regional
What traffic?
impact, but that's my point.
But it might be something to consider in another
Right.
part of this
Yeah.
process.
I think the question at hand is this project likely to create an impact to the abutting community, that they should have the ability to come, to be part of this discussion? I really don't think there's gonna be, as much as I understand, I don't believe it's gonna have an offsite impact. With the exception of, people driving through may have more traffic, but that's not going to impact the people over the border.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. So all in favor of Mike's motion that this is not a regional impact? Aye.
I,
I,
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so we've determined this is not a regional impact, and that motion passes. So back to the question of whether or not to accept the application as complete.
I'd like to see better architectural, even though it's not gonna be visible, I do think that we should have an elevation showing the exterior treatment of both the steel building and the wood frame addition,
You wanna see the siding?
just the sketch elevation.
I have a question. The building, the garage is gonna be primarily for servicing and repairing equipment. Will it have a self-contained drainage system in the building?
It wasn't, no, we don't,
Which is getting us back to the drainage questions again, I suppose.
you're talking like a oil, like a pit, that kind of thing?
I'm thinking about possible spills.
Are you thinking of floor drains?
Yeah.
with
Yeah,
You mean
floor
like
drains.
Okay,
Yeah,
oh,
floor
yeah.
drains.
You'd want like a floor drain with an oil water separator, that kind of thing?
Wow.
Cause I don't have any
Yeah,
floor drains
it-
planned.
Containment for
Yeah.
toxic materials that might get spilled.
I think it gets into, I think there are requirements, DES does have requirements for that if you're gonna put them in, but if you're not putting them in, I'm
Spill
not.
kits
No-
on
no
site.
not
floor
sure they're
drain.
Required.
Yeah. So because the building will not have a floor drain, there's no risk of any oil or whatever getting out because it'll all be contained by hand.
I
You have,
think the
spill
septic-
kits in the shop, but not putting anything in the ground.
Yeah.
Can I actually cycle back to where you were for a moment ago, Phil? Because this building will be mostly not visible to the street, yes? Just to confirm that again, yeah?
Yeah, I don't know, we don't wanna see the street.
Would we be willing to accept a waiver instead of an elevation?
Yeah, I guess so.
I can draw it, I don't have a problem.
Okay.
I know
Well,
it's
you-
gonna, it's
I
just
guess
gonna
either
look
way.
like that, it's just a big,
I mean,
With siding on it.
it's a big box.
Yeah, I was gonna say, the septic plan has a rough layout of where the proposed office is gonna be relative to the fire
It's shown on the topo plan as well. It shows the setbacks and all that.
So
And,
my feeling is, there's a group of people here that probably would like to talk about the project, and I'm sure Brandon would like to answer some questions. And I would love if we could talk about an impact, study, maybe after we've accepted the application. I think that would be fair, and hear the abutters.
are we willing to accept the application without which seems to be the sticking point, the bigger sticking point, without the stormwater analysis?
So is that number 29 on this checklist that says an adequate stormwater drainage system developed by a certified engineer? Is that the element that we are talking about wanting to see in addition to all the other materials that are in the application? Or is it an item, a sub-item from number 31 about, so 31
I think it's
sub-item,
less, 31, I'm sorry.
sub-item 3, environmental impact analysis. So I'm just trying to understand what exactly, because there's a lot of really detailed, slightly different elements. We're talking about erosion and stormwater drainage, and I feel like I'm getting mixed up about which one
So-
exactly we want to see.
29 is the one I'm kind of,
Yeah, I know, 28 is the erosion control plan,
Right.
which is required if it's disturbing over 20,000
Which it's
square
not.
feet. And I feel comfortable that
We don't need
we
that.
don't need an erosion control plan, but I do think that addressing the stormwater runoff is still important,
Which is number 29.
yes.
Okay.
and can I say, Mike, I know you raised a concern about lots of people being here and with probably things to say. And I've been mulling in my own head, if we don't go to a acceptance at this meeting, how to handle the fact that there are people here who want to speak. And normally that would be happen at a public hearing after acceptance. But I do feel that it might even benefit the applicant to hear some feedback in terms of knowing what to expect, to hear some of that tonight. And I know procedurally it's a little bit off, but I think it'd be helpful at the same time. So that is, I've been mulling over how to do that, just in case we don't get to an acceptance.
Can
But we might, I don't know.
Can we decide the stormwater to waive it or to require it after we accept the application as complete?
Because conditional.
And just answer that question after it's,
The one thing I will say, if we try to answer it after, sometimes a stormwater plan can be complex, and I don't know if you have someone on contract to like create one for you.
Yeah, I can get
As soon as we accept, the clock starts ticking, and there's a certain amount of time that everything needs to be completed within, unless we get like we all agree to like extend it further.
I can get the stormwater.
But anyway, this is something to consider.
John,
Yeah.
Brandon is very familiar with all this stuff, and
Yeah.
I'd love to hear sounds like he's given us an answer.
I can get the plan prepared pretty quickly.
Okay.
So,
So the things that we're not gonna ask him to do for that, can we get a waiver on those things, just so it can be formal and
Yeah.
follow the application process
Yeah.
instead of just saying, let's
We
give
could
him a
make it a
waiver?
condition.
Yeah, it's just,
Well, there's no conditions in the acceptance, which is still what we're talking about at this point.
What waivers would you want? Do we need a waiver if we're not if we're under the 20,000 square feet, do you need a waiver for
I
that?
think, I think you need a waiver for the elevations, unless you actually just want to draw them
I
up,
can just
either,
draw
either
them.
way.
That's fine.
And just say you're under the 20,000 square feet. I'd like to get a waiver on this, you know, just something simple, I guess.
You can even like checklist them, like, you
Yeah, I
know.
mean,
Well, that's what you get.
No, I mean, like, in your letter, you can say like this,
Right.
this, and
Oh, you can say, I want a waiver for these following items.
for these reasons, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be very long.
So do
No,
you-
just
do you have a
short and
form?
sweet.
Do you have a form for a waiver, or do I need to just write a little letter?
Just write a letter and say, for these issues, I want to, for these checklist items, I want a waiver. But it sounds like most of the board is sticking with the, item 29.
Stormwater
That we
drainage.
do want
On
that.
the, on the checklist, it's
Yeah.
29, but it's also in the requirements for, the site plan
Yes, it is.
requirements, it's spelled
A
out as
different
well.
item in the,
Yeah, and to your question earlier, I think the checklist on the application is kind of based on
Agree.
Article 16, submission requirements of
Yes.
the site plan regulations.
Yep.
So it's kind of like boiling it all down into a checklist
Yep.
format, but the fully explicated requirements are in that 16, Article 16.
I gotta bring my book with me every time.
Well, yeah.
I will also say a little bit of context. Joseph and I were discussing this because we haven't had a whole lot of applications not accepted recently, but very recently we have. And so it's come up, and the actual state statutes on not accepting an application as complete are really vague, and what that process looks like. And I think that vagueness, I think Joseph and I are on the same page on this, reads as we get the leeway to define like what that process looks like for us without a lot of precedent to look at and without a lot of guidance from the state. So I think as long as we do something reasonable, we can kind of make up a good time frame and set a guidelines for not reapplying, but just saying, we want these things and then we'll accept it.
A continuation.
Yeah, but it's not exactly a continuation. And so there is a little bit of kind of gray area in the law there that I think can work to our benefit rather than detriment here.
So we can not necessarily fully deny the application, but we can say you need to come back.
Well, it would be acceptance or not acceptance.
So kind of what's nice about our town is Joseph is very accessible to the applicants and has probably spent some time with them going over things before just showing up and wondering whether it's complete. They kind of have a really good idea. So I think Plymouth has, especially with Joseph, has done an exceptional job with our applicants, so we're lucky.
The construction timetable. Is that in here? I didn't see that. Did anybody else? Is it on there? So if we can get that.
It'll be pretty quick. As soon as the
Pretty
guys say
quick.
it's
I
okay,
would
we'll
do
be
that
more
pretty
concrete within a week, I would say.
I mean, this is one of the ones, that, me personally, I'd be willing to kind of be a bit lax on for a project like this. Stormwater, on the other hand,
Okay.
so where are we?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the application is complete with the knowledge that he will be bringing back a stormwater drainage system,
Stormwater plan.
stormwater plan.
And an elevation.
And an elevation.
Are you okay with that?
That's not a problem.
I think we determined that impact study was
The regional impact study was not needed.
not needed.
There's a few different types of impact studies.
So there's the development of regional impact, and we said no.
Right.
Then there's the impact study that you were pointing to on our checklist and in our regulations, which is separate from that.
And the board does have the right to ask for additional sort
Yeah.
of third-party studies for an accepted application too, like the traffic study we got with the hotel application. The board can ask for additional studies as
After it's been
necessary,
accepted.
Yes.
That's
We
correct.
can.
Okay. So,
depending on the,
I would like to see that. There's a lot of people. It's a residential area.
Yeah.
And it's very close proximity. There's a lot going on there, and I I think it's really important for the people that are around that area.
Okay, so we have a motion.
Second.
Second. Okay, is there any further discussion?
Can I hear a repetition of what the motion was?
To accept the application is complete with the knowledge that he will come back at a future meeting with to handle item number 29. an
On the
adequate
checklist.
Stormwater drainage plan.
And some sort of impact study?
And an
He didn't
elevation,
say
I
that.
think.
Oh, and the elevation?
Elevation.
Okay,
I think the impact study would be number 31.
yeah, something in 31. There's a sub,
Yeah.
Did he put that in there?
He did not.
no,
Neil, you're still okay with seconding that?
Although we might get our own studies to.
okay. Thank you for repeating.
So in support of that, I just wanted to say, in addition to number 29, in section 18O, there are details about the stormwater management plan to pay attention to. In the site plan regulation, section 18O deals with the requirements for the stormwater management plan.
And you can check with Joseph too for
Yeah.
further clarification. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Should we make this time bound? How much time would you need for something like this?
Well,
Well-
we're bound by
Well,
the
if we,
acceptance process.
if we accept
Okay.
it, then we got 65 days, yeah.
Oh,
Unless we all agree upon a
Extension.
extension beyond that.
Okay.
Fine.
So
We have,
65
I
days.
we have
get it
people that
pretty
wanna
quick, it won't
speak.
be-
We don't have a public hearing yet. We haven't even accepted,
Oh, okay.
so, yeah.
This is acceptance, not hearing.
All right, so further discussion? Okay, all in favor of Mike's motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay?
Okay, abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. The application is accepted as complete, with a bit of an asterisk on there. And so now we can move on to a consideration of the application and whether or not we can approve it, conditionally approve it, as the state likes to say, disapprove or deny it.
So I can say
Over
deny.
again.
What's that?
I can use that word, it's.
Disapprove or denial? The state uses both.
Okay.
Disapprove is kind of an awful word. but,
I agree, yeah.
Not that we're like necessarily, who knows at this point, but,
I don't know.
all right. Do you want to say anything further before we kind of start talking about further issues here?
Go for it.
Okay. So do we have any questions looking forward from this? So obviously, we're going to ask you for the stormwater plan
Yep, I'll get that.
and
And the elevation.
the elevation, and, yeah, so do you think you could have that in the month?
I think I can have it sooner.
Well, actually, a little bit sooner than that to actually get it to us, before the next meeting in a month.
Pretty sure I can get it.
Okay.
Probably by the end of next week, but
Okay, thank you.
pretty sure. Might be the following week, sometimes he's
Okay,
slow.
so you can talk to Joseph and kind of get that worked out.
Make sure you have it.
Because we all sound like we are in agreement that we'd like to have that as per our regulations. And we've already heard from Neil some concerns about traffic, and so we might want to address that as we go along.
Can you please explain the proceedings from here for me, because I don't know where we go from here?
So this is where we ask, as a board first, ask questions and get clarification and see if everything meets our requirements. And when we feel kind of comfortable, maybe not that everything's concluded, but that we've asked our preliminary questions at least, we can open a public hearing
Okay,
and hear from members of the public who would like to speak. I assume there's some of you here who would like to speak about this project. And
so that's
we'll see where
true.
we are.
That's
Yeah.
tricky because we don't have all of the information. We don't have that stormwater.
Yeah.
True.
And because of that, nothing is ever kind of determined ahead of time. But it sounds like there's a pretty good chance that we're going to continue this hearing.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, I understand. Thank you.
Anything from members of the board?
I have a question for the applicant.
Yeah.
Do you have an anticipation of how many vehicle trips per day might be in and out of the facility?
Not very many typically. Be very sporadic. I mean, we only have 2 trucks on the road, so there's not a lot of,
Okay.
we have a lot more, but they don't,
If you have customer vehicles coming in for service, though, there might be a couple of those.
couple here and there, but there's no more than a couple a day. It's not
Okay.
a lot. It's not like a big high production shop where we're working on a whole lot of vehicles. We have a couple customers that bring their stuff to us and
So the other thing to think about is this is your current use, but this is a site plan for the facility. And if you were to sell it someday and someone else were to take it over and put in a commercial repair shop, there could be a lot more volume there too.
ultimately the facility's a rental facility to the company that does the truck maintenance.
Oh, got it.
I
Okay.
mean, I own both companies, but that's the, you
Those
know
are
what
the
I
inner
mean? So
workings.
ultimately, that would just be a change of use. You'd have to get a new application anyway,
Okay.
if I did sell it.
So it's gonna be held by a real estate holding company and operated by the,
BH Holdings
Okay.
owns the real estate in the building and it's rented by other companies.
okay, and you pay yourself, but keeps
Yeah,
it cleaner.
but ultimately, if I did sell it someday, there'd be a new company, new rental, new tenant, so you'd have a new change of use, so you'd have to reevaluate whatever they were gonna do anyway.
But it could be the same use. If
It-
it
it
if
wouldn't
it was
necess- yeah.
auto repair and
That would be
maintenance,
a-
like it would technically not be the same use, which is my concern is that like you may not have plans to have a lot of vehicle trips, but another owner under the same use might not have to come back to us. And I'm just trying to think.
So the
cover our
board's concern
bases.
there is
I got you.
if it's the same use, it wouldn't need to go through board approval, despite having that higher traffic.
Don't they have to do it if there's a whole new owner, a new tenant anyway? I mean, that
If
would,
it's
No.
the same use,
no?
yeah.
All right.
If it's somebody else, if somebody else moves in and starts doing auto service and they're doing 30 cars a day, you'd
That's different,
see
yeah.
30 or 40 people trips a day, and it'd be different.
I don't plan on selling it, if that helps.
If the use plan table changed, then if it was sold, then it would,
Well, okay, fair enough.
just saying.
Is Beach Hill Road posted in the spring? Did you find that out, Joseph? Do you know?
I have not received a comment from the highway department yet. I did reach out to them, but they have not provided anything yet.
I think it's posted at the Campton Town Line.
Okay, so in Plymouth,
Because
it's not?
the solid waste facility, there are big trucks going in and out of there all the time.
When you say posted, you mean limited tonnage? Yeah, okay.
During the spring.
During the spring, yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Beach Hill Road, I feel like it's kind of a residential road that really isn't 100% equipped to have heavy equipment and heavy trucks going back and forth during the day. We all know what construction does. You take off, you're gone for days, weeks, months, doing jobs. You come back, you come in and out, you use different pieces of equipment, it comes in and out. I just feel like the road with the pedestrian traffic on it, the bicycle traffic on it, just the parks that are there, there's elderly housing there, there's lots of kids, I have concerns about that. I don't know where I'm going with this, just want to throw it out there.
Well, it sounds like some of your concerns, we might reach out again to the highway department to make sure they actually get to us in time for our next meeting. As far as the other uses, that would not be the highway department. And this is, this is one of those cases where we might have uses that might not seem to some of us fully healthy next to one another from a zoning perspective, but we allow them in our zoning ordinance, which is one of the things we're talking about in our other meetings. But
We have the zoning we have right now.
yeah, so as long as we're meeting all the requirements,
I
it
would,
might be on us that we didn't,
I understand your concern about the truck traffic on that road, but I would imagine that any truck traffic in and out of this facility would probably be a fraction of the traffic going in and out of the transfer station. Because, I mean, there are trucks that haul in and out of there to get refuse out, recycling out.
And we're gonna add to it.
We are,
Mhm.
but I think it's gonna be an incremental addition, not multiplying it by 3.
And as far as conflicting uses and, from a kind of public health perspective, or however we want to define that, I think that's something to consider as we consider zoning at our other meetings, our work sessions. This is like yet another reason to really consider that. But these are our regulations at this point.
May I ask the applicant, why did you decide to locate the building where you did on the lot?
Because you can't see it.
Because you can't see it, and because it's right on the existing gravel driveway?
Yeah, and it's already cleared there. There's now less impact.
Mm-hmm.
It's not visible.
Okay.
Kind of out of the way.
Okay, so you really thought about all of the
And
elements.
It's far enough away from everything.
Yeah, I see the setbacks. Very well notated.
If I recall, that area is fairly sandy and granular soil.
Yep.
Yeah.
Will you be stockpiling any material out there?
Probably.
Like, what?
Topsoil.
Okay.
You don't anticipate like having a bunch of extra vehicles for like parts or anything like that, or?
There's a few trucks, but not anything, I mean, mostly just future projects that we have.
Okay.
We buy trucks and rebuild them, and then we sell them, and then
Okay.
we build some more.
You plan on redesigning the layout for the entrance onto Beach Hill Road?
I don't have any plans to change that currently. Someday I'd like to open up the line of sight a little bit better, because looking up the hill's a little tough, but I did talk to the highway department about that when I met him out there.
Where do you get your topsoil?
Everywhere.
Everywhere?
He makes it.
Any job
You
site.
can find it.
My brain just immediately goes to Japanese knotweed and other.
Oh, no, we don't want that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that.
I know nobody wants that, but it's just in it, so.
Yeah, you know that though before you.
I'm sure he
Pretty
doesn't
obvious.
want it.
I mean, I'm not saying he wants it at all.
Now, will you be processing any materials out there?
Rarely.
So if you bring in some rock and you want to crush it, there's the chance that you may want to do that? You may want to crush it up for gravel, for a job or anything? Will you be doing that out there?
So, for example, currently we ran the crusher for 3 days in the last 2 years at my current facility.
So there is the possibility that you will do that, just so that people know.
Very rarely, yeah.
So that's, yeah, I would say I would want any of those uses. I mean, if you're gonna be storing material or operating a crusher on the site, I would think that would need to be on the site plan, just so that,
As a separate use.
yeah.
It wouldn't be any, I mean, it's all sand, as you said. You don't crush sand anyway, so.
True, but if you've got material from off-site,
I think it's a good use for that piece of land. I'm just concerned about traffic congestion.
Crushing and processing, it will be important to consider the difference between industry, the industrial use, which requires a special exception. In the ag zone, it is allowed by special exception, but that will just be an important piece to consider if that is a use that's proposed at some point on the site.
Right.
So crushing and processing would be a special exception.
I would
And
have to check, and ultimately, board can determine if they feel it fits within that zoning
Yeah.
category of industrial or some other use.
So can you confirm that you will not be crushing and
Like I said,
like processing in that regard?
Very rare. Typically, we would crush if we had materials on site, and then
I mean, the problem with very rare is that it is an occurrence
When
though.
you say on-site, you mean
On a-
somewhere
on a
else
job-
on
on
a
a
job
job
site, not at this facility? Okay.
So, I have no interest either way, but my home is probably within 2 miles of his current location, and I probably go by 2 or 3 times a day. And rarely do I see vehicles going in and out. I don't think I've seen any, that I've ever noticed any processing of materials there. I enjoy driving by and seeing the trucks, but that's just me.
yeah, like I said, it's been like 3 days in the last 2 years. We haven't.
Yeah,
It's not very common.
there was probably a lot more traffic when the culverts were sold from there.
Yeah, that was a lot more there.
But since then, it's It's very little to none.
I am concerned about the neighborhood right next door, just generally about the application, considering the small but not impossible potential of crushing stone. I wonder how that would affect the neighborhood as well. So I do want to hear from the neighbors.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, actually, so it's a good segue. Is this a good time for opening the public hearing?
Yeah, that's good. Just like noise first thing in the morning, starting up, getting ready to go, air brakes, all of that stuff, backup alarms. Is there a time that you get started in the morning typically?
It all depends on where we're working.
Because that's noise. I don't know if we have a noise ordinance or not, but that's noise in a neighborhood.
I think that sort of rubs on the line of the application is for a repair station.
Right.
Vehicle
Well,
repair, maybe.
yeah, vehicle repair, but then all the other ancillary things we're hearing about do not fall under that repair station criteria. I don't know where they fall.
That's the
I
problem.
don't
We
have
just
that
don't have
answer.
something for it to fall under.
Yeah,
I know they're different.
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, let's hear from,
So let's hear from the public. It is currently 7:42, and I will open a public hearing. If you'd like to speak to this application, please come up to the podium and identify yourself and ask a question, make a comment, and be heard.
So, direct questions to the board.
Oh, yes, and please do direct questions to the board. Even if you're kind of thinking about the applicant, we can always redirect over there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. My name is Jeffrey Kelly. I'm a resident of Plymouth for 35 years. I'm an abutter to this project. I live on Brookside Drive, which is a cul-de-sac. I live right down at the very end. So I want to thank the board for allowing us to attend and speak. I also want to recognize this gentleman in the corner. He helped answer a number of our questions the other day and got us off going on the right foot. So I want to thank you for the opportunity and the privilege.
You're appreciated, Joseph.
So I recognize a lot of the faces in the room, and it's nice to see you all. I used to be the health officer in this town probably about 20 years ago, so I've got a lot of familiarity on a lot of the stuff. But right now, I'm speaking a lot from the heart, and also on the behalf of my neighbors. We are a retirement community unofficially. I am only 62, but I'm still the spring chicken on the group, but I'm the one who's been there the longest, so I can speak with a lot of education about the comings and goings of Beach Hill Drive. I appreciate the support that I'm hearing from a number of the people in the room, so enough of that stuff, and I'll get right to some of the comments. We are concerned about the noise, okay? Just the other day, when I was in my backyard, we heard a loud slap, which was the slap of a tailgate from a dump truck. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever heard that, but it sounds like a nuclear explosion. My grandchildren were freaked out. My dogs took off. My wife was unfamiliar with the noise. And I can only imagine how my neighbors felt, especially the neighbors just to the right beside me, who are less than 100 yards from where Mr. Hiltz wants to put this building. So there's a lot of concern, and I don't know if any of you have heard a tailgate slap, but it's bad. It's bad, and we certainly don't want to hear that kind of noise. Secondly, we are concerned about the diesel fumes. Again, we're less than 100 yards away. We don't need that coming in our windows. It was bad enough when the Aherns had the property, and one of their relatives was in the backyard shooting off guns. By the time we can get the police there, this person shooting guns is gone. So it's close enough to be freaky out there. There was a lot of discussion around the traffic and the safety. Okay, there was mention about a lot of traffic's coming from Campton up down the hill, and you're absolutely right. It's a drag strip coming down that road. I've seen a number of living right across the street from the recycling center. I have seen a lot of accidents of people who can't get out of the recycling center because of the trees. My neighbor many years ago was almost killed coming out of the recycling center because you got to pull out into the road to see if traffic is coming. So there's a major concern. It's not a lined road, okay? I've never seen a school bus go up this street. There is no ditches on this road. So imagine this road in the wintertime. The plowing, they have limited access in regards to where they're gonna put the snow, which is just narrowing the road even further. So when you have, and yes, the gentleman in the corner here, Mr. MacGyver, mentioned about, people, big trucks coming out of the recycling center. Trying to envision 2 large trucks passing is gonna be a near impossibility, especially in the wintertime. So there's that concern. Yes, the other day, I saw a veteran probably pushing his wife up the street in a wheelchair. We have kids walking down that road in the morning to catch the bus. Let's not forget about the end of that road where it meets Fairgrounds Road. There's a telephone pole right smack dab in the middle of it. And there's still some questions in regards to, is it yield, is it left, who's got the right of way? We're just adding more confusion and more chaos and more traffic to that particular location. We just don't think it's safe for pedestrians. It's not safe for two-way traffic. Yes, the police put up some UR and radar signs the other day, but I'm looking in the trees, my neighbor's looking in the trees, we don't see any radar guns. And and those signs are only as good as one day, when somebody reads the sign and, yep, no radar, and they go right back to speeding. So for Mr. Hilton, the safety of his drivers and his trucks, people coming flying down that hill, or vice versa, coming off Fairgrounds Road and punching it, it's a safety hazard. So we're definitely concerned about that. There was a lot of discussion about runoff. This is a deep ravine river back there. I would really encourage the committee, that if you haven't already, but go out and walk the site, okay? The ravine is right behind my house on all 3 sides of my property, and because of the poor planning of the design of the cul-de-sac 35 years ago, my backyard is a sinkhole because the water comes down my street, misses the culverts, and goes right down my property line, and I'm losing my backyard right now. A lot of that is because, there's rodents, there's decaying trees and brush on the sides of those hills that lead down into the river, and the property that Mr. Hiltz wants to put his business on has got the same circumstance on his side. So over a period of time, you got the moles, you got the raccoons, you got the skunks, you got every wildlife living in the side of those cliffs, and they are a cliff. Any one of you are welcome to come and see me. I'm retired now. You're welcome to stop my property, and I'll show you that cliff. And he's got the same thing in his backyard. And with the water and the slope that was mentioned, water's coming down that hill, but it's gonna continue beyond his building and go over the back. And if he doesn't do something about, I think he mentioned a great word around silt line or a silt fence. If he doesn't do something, he's gonna lose his building. He's gonna lose his property down that ravine. So I'd encourage you to go and check that out. I have no issues personally with the Hiltz family or Brandon. My family knows Jeremy. I think it's a terrific family, and they're good business people. Okay, but it is a large piece of property out there. He's already storing vehicles that are not registered to be on the road. We're concerned about, having been a health officer before, I know in the past I've had to go out and check on abandoned vehicles. Do they still have gasoline in them? Do they still have oil in them? Is the vehicles that he's parking out there that he's not using and he's already parking out there, is it seeping into our groundwater? Is it seeping into that river? So I just want to make sure that everybody's upfront in regards to what this property is going to be used for. Susan, Mike, Molly, Phil, everyone who's spoken here today, I appreciate you raising some really great questions and being concerned. I'm sure that Mr. Hiltz is a reputable and professional businessman, but like it got mentioned, if he ever does, for some unfortunate reason or the right reason, sell off his property, what is this property going to be in the future? So I too am very interested about an impact analysis. I am very also interested in the erosion plans. Did I get it all, Dan? Okay. Dan and Pam are my neighbors, and it's their home that is less than 100 yards to this building. And mine is a little bit more at an angle, but it's right there. We just want to keep the peace and quiet. We want a good, safe situation for Beach Hill, and it's already tough enough with the speed and the traffic and the lines, lack of lines, and just don't want to see things get any worse. And over time, things can, just because of erosion and such. But I'll get off my soapbox, and again, I appreciate all you and all the hard work that you folks do, and I appreciate the privilege to speak here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I very much appreciate you articulating all
Question
that.
for Jeff before.
Can I actually make one comment, and then I'll turn it over to you?
Sure.
I just wanted to remember to remind everybody on the board, that you have, as per the application, signed application, you have the right to go on the property and have a look around. And B, if we want to schedule a site visit, we can do that. Mike?
Did you mention an Ahern family owned the property back there?
Was it Ahern?
Or was it Avery?
Avery, I said Ahern, I stand corrected, you're absolutely right, Avery, Avery. Not Mr. A, not your family, excuse me. My apologies, sorry about that. Avery gets me every time.
Yeah, they both begin with that.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I got your line of, I was in your line of sight. That's all right. I was wanting to say they were.
Right here, look at these.
Parking right here if you'd like it.
Would you like to speak? Just come up and identify yourself, please, and say what you need to say.
Hi, my name's Katie Badalak. I live on Brookside Drive. And I just wanted to make a couple comments to add to what Jeff had to say. Just big picture, this property has been quiet, for lack of a better word, for years. The Avery sisters that live there were in the house. They weren't doing anything to the property. So as Jeff said, I'm very interested in whatever kind of studies can be done, like erosion impact. I know we're going to have a stormwater management plan done, so I appreciate that. But that property has been, not disturbed for years. So who knows what just general, nature, what it's done with the streams and in terms of the erosion, et cetera. Until somebody really looks at that scientifically, we don't know what we're dealing with. And as an abutter, that's very interesting to me. So I just wanted to reinforce that. Also, my special interest is pedestrian traffic. I'm one of those people. I'm on that street on Beach Hill maybe 4 times a week. I go up towards Campton, into Campton, and then I'll go down to out Fairgrounds. So right now, as you probably know, there's no sidewalks. There are some places where from Brookside to Fairgrounds, on the right side, it's relatively flat, and if a truck's coming, I can step over on the right side, but on the left side, you can't do that. I mean, it's all overgrown. And as Jeff mentioned, it is a school, there's a school bus stop there. I mean, I had 3 kids that went to school from Brookside Drive, and we kind of gave up on the bus because if you are walking from, you turn right off of Brookside onto Beach Hill, you're supposed to walk on the left side facing traffic. Well, that's a corner there, and if you really need to see it to appreciate it. But people come around that corner, they can't see you walking right in front of them. And so, I mean, my kids, I'm like, how do you make sure a kid crosses ahead of time? I mean, they would have to cross again and be on the wrong side of the street. So I think, I don't know who does it, the police department, the highway department. I think that needs to be looked at. We should have a crosswalk. If people are really going to walk up towards Fairgrounds Road, they need a safe way to cross over, because you don't want to be there when those cars are making that turn, that right-hand turn up Beach Hill. Some people are going too fast, and, I don't want to be there when the day that happens. But, so that intersection is not safe for pedestrians up there at Fairgrounds and Beach Hill. But also Beach Hill, as has been mentioned, there's no sidewalks. So, and if you have, if you go left up Brookside towards the property that Mr. Hiltz has, once you get past the town dump, then there are ditches. I mean, it's like the road has eroded on the side. I have to give Campton credit because I've gone past the Campton line. They really dug out those ditches and they threw a bunch of big rocks in there. And when it rains, I'm walking past it on a regular basis. That doesn't erode. But in Plymouth, we don't have that kind of drainage. And it's all the dirt is, breaking away and goes across the street or whatever. So Plymouth needs to do something with that on the side. But if I'm going up towards Mr. Hiltz's property and a large truck is coming down, and there has been more traffic on Campton, they must be building a lot of nice places up there. Because these big trucks, big dump trucks are coming down, and there isn't that much road on Beach Hill for 2 dump trucks. And then if I'm trying to walk up, I can't really jump into this side ditch thing without hurting myself. So it's not compatible, I don't think, for traffic and pedestrians, and I don't know exactly, what my rights are as a pedestrian, but I think I'm supposed to be able to walk up that road. So, sidewalks would be nice. I think that's probably pie in the sky, but it's difficult for pedestrians right now to walk safely on either side of Beach Hill, going up to the Campton line or back down to Fairgrounds, with some exceptions where it's flat. So I just think that needs to be addressed, and I don't know if that affects Mr. Hiltz's application, but just in general, I think, for safety, it should be addressed. And as somebody, I think Susan mentioned, Pine Gate Road, there's a lot of people in there. And, some of them want to come out. There's older people who come out and walk, and that's great. They're getting their exercise. But, it's a busy intersection. And then you have the dump, right? If you're coming from Fairgrounds and you're going towards the dump, you have Pine Gate and then you have the dump. I'm glad the police put in a speed limit sign, and there is that radar sign. But it seems like, we need to have some enforcement or something, some slow down pedestrians or something, because it's just, it's not compatible for pedestrians, if you ask me. So I think those are my points, other than I would concur with everything Jeff said about the noise. Yeah, I heard that loud thing the other day. I'm like, what was that? And it's startling. And if you have grandkids or you just have kids, it can be alarming. So that's all I want to say, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Phil Steinkraus. I also live on Brookside Drive. I just wanted to ask, why are you moving your company to this location? It seems like where you are now is direct access to 93 and much less residential.
If you'd like to respond, just please come up.
Well, I would also.
Oh, and
I mean-
yeah, address your questions through the board.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't think the applicant should feel the need to respond. I mean,
I
you
mean, it's
can,
up to you. It's
you
up
can
to
if you
you.
want, but this is our hearing where,
Okay.
you know, the applicants come to us for this. Yeah, I don't think we
To the
should.
board,
He
has,
seemed like
Sure,
he
call.
was, he seemed like he was maybe going to, but
But
if you
but
don't,
it's
if
your
you don't
call.
want to, you don't have to. Yeah. Thank you, Phil.
okay, that's fine.
I hope you don't mind me doing
No,
it.
The
that's fine.
board hasn't visited the gentleman's website. I suggest you do. It gives you a good idea of the size of the equipment this company has. It's not little trucks, it's big trucks and big excavation equipment. In addition, to get to 93, you need to go on a section of Fairgrounds Road. Again, multiple bus stops for kids. A general question, I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence, but, excuse me, why do towns have zones and zoning laws? It's to prevent something like an industrial property ending up right next to a residential area, or a liquor store ending up next to a school. So in my mind, again, this is industrial, right in the middle of a residential area. And to get from there to the highway, it's all residential.
Please bring those comments to our next hearing on zoning amendments.
We were just talking about this 2
Okay.
weeks ago, and in 2 more weeks or so,
Okay, perfect.
first Thursday of the next month, we'll be talking about these very issues.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Good evening. Nancy Comey, a butter on 260 Fairgrounds, which abuts the Avery property, and now Mr. Hill's property. My concern is all of the above, that everyone has mentioned, so I'm not gonna go through that again. But the bridge that he's talking about to go over from Beach Hill to the back of the fairgrounds entrance is decaying. The cul-de-sac doesn't even exist hardly at all, so I would encourage you to do a site walk before you make any further approvals, et cetera. I would also encourage you, when you ask the applicant for how many of something, you get a definitive answer, instead of just a few, or not many, or probably, or maybe. Excuse me, I have a throat. Love the idea of the erosion study, the impact study, the traffic study, and the special exemption of the industrial. That's so important, because this is setting a precedent that you can't return afterwards. It's been mentioned. Thank you very much for your time. Also, it's the Patriots game, so I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I was just trying to look up something here.
Have the score.
I can look it up later.
So-
Phil?
No, that's fine. We're in public. I have a question or a comment.
I had a question and comment as well.
But I want to make sure.
Are there
the
any
public
other
is-
members of the public, either online or in this room, who would like to speak at the moment? We can leave the public hearing open for a little bit if we'd like, in case anybody comes up with further questions, but, okay. Phil, what was your question?
So, looking at the site plan, the survey, this one that's kind of light, it looks like, you know, the area that's shown in red, I presume that's the area that's accounted for as the 18,700 square feet. I would presume that there's probably a desire to use the rest of the cleared area. And I would think that if that's gonna be, if the applicant is intending to use that for storage of material or processing, we should clear that up sooner than later. It's, you know, possible that that might trigger the disturbance of more than 20,000 square feet, which would require an erosion control plan, and it may require a special exception. So, you know, I think what I'm thinking is it's better to get this out and clearly define what activities are gonna take place on this parcel so that it's not a question. That's the benefit of a site plan. If the applicant is intending to store materials and potentially do some processing there, I think that should be included on the site plan. even if it requires a special exception for that use. Otherwise, I think the site plan should specify that no uses are permitted outside of the originally proposed 18,700 square feet area without site plan revisions. And I'm not trying to say those things can't be done, but I think that this is the process where it should be clear to everyone that the rest of the parcel is going to be used for material storage, or there may be a crusher there up to 3 weeks per year, not to be operated beyond certain hours. I think it only protects you to make those uses clear. That's my thought. And I don't know what the rest of the
Well,
board thinks.
I was looking up similarly. We've heard about from various individuals this evening, and I don't know exactly what's going to be happening there either. I mentioned the potential of falling into the junkyard category, and I just wanted to pull up the definition just to clarify what that is. Any yard or field used for the storage of or old metals, old bottles, solid textile mill waste, unfinished cloth, blah, blah, blah. 2 or more unregistered motor vehicles which are unfit for use on highways, used parts and material of motor vehicles, and other secondhand or waste articles. It doesn't take a lot to kind of fall into that category, and that is also a separate use. And is that a special exception, Joseph?
It is in the
That's a
ag zone.
special exception, and so it's just good to know what that is, just to be careful. It's pretty easy in this sort of a business to kind of slip into that without even intending to necessarily. But that is how we define it in the town.
And I think that definition is actually based in the RSA's too. It's kind of a statewide. And so, 2 unregistered vehicles or parts thereof. So like, a truck parked broken without a plate plus 2 half trucks broken, like, that's gonna put you over that limit too, so.
I also wanted to ask, so presumably there's a driveway permit that's pre-existing for this property.
It's an existing road, right?
And I was gonna ask Joseph, when we're changing use and changing to a use that involves significantly heavier vehicles than a standard driveway would have, and this is an old driveway and an old permit, we've heard some concerns about the culvert and such. Is anything triggered there or not because it's already permitted?
So I can say if this were a state road, there likely would need to be a new review. Since it's a town road, it would be the highway department's review of driveway permits. So what exactly they would require for a change of use like this, I don't know. State road driveways, it's a much lower change of use threshold. I just don't know. I would have to defer. I would hope we could get some clarity from the highway department about that, because I don't have the answer to
So
that.
it's sounding like we have several questions for the highway department to clarify before our next meeting.
I did meet the highway department out there.
You did, okay,
They're all set,
They're-
The
they're-
only time you need a new permit is when you got a new curb cut.
okay.
What you do beyond the road on your property out there.
And they're not concerned with the additional impact on your existing driveway, okay.
I would imagine, was that overflow parking for the fair at one point?
Yeah, they did all the staging for all.
Yeah, so that would have had some big trucks, and like, it looks, from the map, it looks like there's the driveway comes to the road kind of askew, so if you're going south on Beach Hill Road, it's a pretty easy turn, but if you're gonna try to go up Beach Hill Road, it would be a harder access. Does that sound right?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't think it was right going south of it.
North would be towards Campton, south would be towards Plymouth.
So I guess a good direction forward at this point, if we are, I would presume at least, probably going to continue this, given some of the questions we still have and information we were looking for. Can we be very specific about what we'd like to see for the next meeting?
Well, we've already asked for the stormwater plan, and I'd like to just put it in the hands of the applicant to say, if you think you want to expand this beyond the proposed 18,000 square foot, I'd suggest looking at an erosion control plan to comply.
I'll have them add that to the stormwater.
What's that?
I'll have them add erosion onto the stormwater plan, so it'll be
So it'd also be good, to, like, even if you're planning to do, you know, like, it'd be good to show on the plan, like, where you're planning to do material storage and if
I'm
that's,
not currently planning any of that.
so you're not.
Eventually, but right now I'm not looking to do anything more than keep the building up
Okay,
and figure out what our next plans are. I'll be back after this part.
okay,
I don't know what my next plans are, though, so I don't.
all right. And I'm not trying to be obstructionist with this, I'm just, I'm trying to make it clear to everybody that, yeah. I mean, you could get the building permit and come back for an industrial expansion later, and a special exception could be denied. Like, it might behoove you to go for that sooner than later before you put the building up, if that's really part of your plan.
I mean, just to really step back for a moment, I mean, just in terms of like what we're here for on the board, right?
Yeah.
Part of that is to promote development, like, but part of that is also to promote development that is safe and conducive to our community and protect our community as well. And so we kind of, you know, always have to balance those things against one another and use our regulations to do that. So we should look into feedback from the highway department on our side about a few issues that we had questions about. Impact issues. Sue, you had a bunch of questions about impact. Is there anything specific that we could request in this regard?
I guess what kind of an impact is it gonna make to the neighbors?
Yeah.
On the road? I think probably, let me look at the list that Joseph gave me.
While Sue's looking at that, when we do talk to Joe at the highway, I think it's worth exploring what kind of pedestrian crossing should be there no matter what, whether this happens or not. I'm concerned that the folks are walking down that road and can't get onto Fairgrounds Road, where you see many people
Yeah.
walking on a regular basis. That at minimum needs to be addressed.
I think the board has talked a lot about pedestrian access around that whole area there, and it is definitely a concern. And I'm not certain that this particular development will necessarily trigger all of that to be fixed.
Well, I mean, whether
But it's definitely worth looking at and considering those issues, and they are important to the community. And we've heard again and again, and we've seen again and again, most of us probably, that these are real issues. Yeah.
So if you're looking at number 31, are you interested in?
Yeah, so there's a demographic description and projected change. Community facilities impact
So-
doesn't really,
Community facilities impact has a lot of things under it, like, for example, traffic, schools, public safety, recreation.
schools, there's no schools there, but
I think
traffic, public safety.
Recreation, it sounds like, if we're thinking about walking.
And I heard some concerns about environmental issues. So environmental impact analysis.
Do we have more information about how we define environmental impact?
Well, I was actually going to recommend that for addressing some of these issues.
Yeah.
I mean, we can define them as well to some extent.
Yeah.
But obviously stay in contact with Joseph to kind of get some feedback on how to. But in terms of what we specifically want as a board, I think we have some leeway to make requests.
Because is sound an environmental impact?
It can be.
Can be.
Yeah.
I think the RSA's, when they talk about disturbances, it can be, you know, noise, vibration, noxious odors, and any of the
Yeah.
above.
Yeah.
Like, those are all valid concerns for
Yep.
abutting. If I can jump in, one of the abutters had expressed concern about the distance, and I just,
The what?
the
Distance.
distance from the home to the proposed building, and it looks like it's roughly 370 feet from the nearest home to the roughly scaling where the applicant's showing the building to the building location.
Now that I'm looking at the topo here, I do have more concerns about, for example, the proximity of, oh my gosh, the septic to the edge of the
The bank.
banking of the stream. I'm seeing the banking being rather steep, pretty close to that area. Okay, great.
The state
Can't argue with that then.
The state requires you have a 20-foot setback from the leach field to a steep slope.
Okay. No problem then.
Yes.
If we were to do a site visit, would we be able, if we were on that site where the proposed building is going in, would a site visit benefit anyone in that, could we see the homes from, you can see the homes from there?
So you're proposing we do a site visit? I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that.
The building is facing north, so most of the activity is gonna be on the north side of the building.
Mhm.
And,
Yep.
right,
I'm just not sure what we'd be able to see, but if there is a benefit to trying to work something out, alleviate concerns, if there is a way to do that, so that,
I think the way the building's set on the land, all the doors face away from any of the neighboring houses. So any noise, even my property,
let's,
I'll just remind us all to speak at the podium if we're not mic'd over here. Going forward. Yeah.
so the building, and then, which is on the housing side of your driveway, if there were to be materials dropped off with a dump truck, and where would that happen? Still on that same side of your driveway? It'd be on the other side? Is there a way that that could happen back further into the property? Is there any way? Because I get it, you know, the noise of the, I always think, oh, who's doing something? It's kind of interesting, but I get it if you're trying to sleep and you're retired and you want to sleep till 7 or 8 or 9. How far back could that material, or would an extra 100 feet back make any difference? I mean, not that that's what the planning board's here to talk about, but
So, does it sound like we want to do a site visit? How do we all,
could
Sure.
we
Yeah,
do it on
I'm up for a
our,
site visit.
okay,
prior to our
next business meeting?
business meeting?
So that would be the second,
The third Thursday of
third Thursday
October.
of October, which,
17th.
17th, thank you, Joseph.
No, our, not our business.
Oh, you mean our work
Work-
session?
Our work session, prior to our work, so that then, did he decide whether he's coming back in a month or 2 months?
Well, I think what we were talking about is a month. You were saying you can get the things we were asking for pretty quickly.
I'll talk to my
Yeah.
engineer tomorrow.
Okay, well, that's fine then, okay.
So I think it'd be kind of neat at the first Thursday of the month. But it's a lot to ask all the neighbors to show up for that one, and then the next one 2 weeks later.
I mean, I don't think, it doesn't sound like, I mean, from what you're requesting, for example, here, in terms of potential modifications to meet the needs of the community, we're not talking about reciting the buildings necessarily, although we might find concerns. It would seem better to probably do it back to back with a business meeting, so it's
Yeah.
on the same day for the abutters and everyone else.
So they meet there and then they come back here.
Yes, yeah,
I would think that would be better as well.
yeah.
That's fine.
So what's the date of that, the 17th?
That would be at 5:30 at the, that's good with you?
Is that okay?
Okay.
Yeah, so we will, so I guess it will be up to the board to decide if they want to schedule that as a public hearing or just schedule it as a public meeting. So with a site visit, often the board schedules those as a publicly noticed meeting. The public is welcome and encouraged to attend. The board will be there, have a quorum. But the board can't make a decision outside of a noticed hearing. So if the board were to continue the hearing to the regularly scheduled October 17th meeting, the board could still meet and consider at that site visit meeting, but couldn't necessarily make a decision there, which wouldn't be advisable at a site visit.
And even if it's not an official public hearing, it doesn't mean we can't listen to the public.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, and it prevents me from having to make strong admonitions about approving something at the site visit, which I've done in the past, when we had a hearing there. That would make sense to me, to have a public meeting at the 17th at 5:30, and then a public hearing, continue the public hearing to here at 6:30.
Sunset is at 6 PM, so we should be okay.
Oh, yeah, I forgot, we're into that season, aren't we?
Approaching that season.
Yeah. Thanks for the reminder, I always forget, like, you know, wandering around with a flashlight. Anything else that we want to,
How do we address the potential concerns about noise and environmental impacts? Can we address that when we have this continuance?
we can, and, Joseph, do you have any guidance about how, specifics about what a, study of that would look like, and a good report on that would look like?
Yeah, I mean, the board could certainly request additional studies. I don't necessarily have information about, I mean, there's a lot of types of environmental impact
Yeah.
studies that someone could do.
Yeah.
You could certainly have something very simple or very complex. I guess that would ultimately be up to what information does the board need to feel comfortable with it, and I'm sure, you know, there could be studies to address that. So certainly, you know, plans about the hours, the potential volume of noise, any potential sound buffering, all those could be kind of a noise impact statement. You could have a more holistic environmental study that takes into consideration any number of things. The board has the right to ask for those types of studies if they deem them necessary, but it's important to know what kind of information the board would want to be able to have the study done accordingly.
And I'll mention this, there's precedent on this board for asking for that sort of information, especially from some of the storage facilities that have come through that were abutting residential properties.
I mean, the applicant could offer hours of operation that might help appease the concerns of abutters around noise and, but, you know, that's kind of, it's up to him too.
Yeah. Because you've heard many of the concerns of the community, and so it would be good to address some of those moving forward. And we'll take a site visit on the 17th. And so all members of the public, I guess it won't be very far from any of you, are certainly welcome. And anything else, or should we entertain a motion?
Make a motion that we continue this to October 17th at our 6:30 meeting, but knowing that we will have a site visit at 5:30 prior.
Second.
Can I ask the applicant, is the 5:30 site walk okay with you? Does that work with your schedule?
Said yes.
Thank you. I missed that, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh,
Not till November.
Sunset is at 6 PM on that night.
and we will meet,
Be done before.
and we will
We'll
meet
be
at,
quick.
up Brandon's driveway at, is that where you're thinking we would meet?
Okay.
Is there adequate room to park if we pull up and, can we pull?
Michael can bring his fire truck.
So we have a motion. Did we have a second?
I seconded it.
Oh, you seconded it, okay. We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. We are continued to, the public hearing is continued to the 17th at 6:30, and we will have a site visit at 5:30 on the same day. And we'll try to be quick before it gets dark.
6:30, it'll be dark.
Well, that's when we come back here, though, so.
It'll be
Plenty of
fine.
time. Plenty of time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank you.
for all your time.
Yeah, catch you later.
And of course, if you have, you should probably stay in communication with Joseph to,
Yeah, I can send that, certainly can send out the minutes, and also this will be on YouTube, if you wanted to watch back to get anything, but
don't have
we'll
to stay if you
give
don't want to.
We'll get you the minutes too, copy of the minutes.
Tiny
not a
things.
lot.
Not a lot.
Sure. Yeah,
Not unless you want to touch
no
base.
problem. Yep, no problem.
Thanks, Brandon.
All right. So you're here for the pre-application review? No,
No.
uh, I assume we have no informational or pre-application reviews, Joseph?
Nobody has reached out
Okay.
about one.
Other business for members of the board and planning staff?
I already kind of covered the other business about the statutory changes.
Yep.
That guide is going to be really helpful. They put this out every year with the planning and zoning changes. I would say, you know, it's worth taking a look at as we start those discussions.
Good homework.
One brief moment of other business I'll just mention. We do have another work session at our next meeting, and we're going to be talking about zoning amendments, potential zoning amendments. And I would certainly encourage everyone to get the word out to the community to show up and have a discussion.
Yeah.
And for anybody listening on YouTube or Penny Baker TV, please, hey, Penny Baker TV's on YouTube.
Oh, yes, you're right. It is on YouTube.
Please come on to our work session on the first Thursday of October. to
October
Talk
3rd.
about potential zoning amendments.
Cultural zone on that?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so you're on that, Mike?
What was that about the first Thursday?
We're getting a
That will be the
notice
work
out to our
session.
membership.
To talk about
I just want
zoning.
to make sure we know
It's
when it
not
was,
like an
that's all.
item agenda, it's just
Right.
whoever shows up.
Yeah, okay.
So the work session is the 3rd. Yep.
October 3rd?
Public comments?
Where's Frank?
What brings you here tonight? Oh, all right, excellent. There we go.
All right. I'll entertain motions. Or we can just hang out for a while.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Sue.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
Well,
You can hang out for a while, Phil, if you like.
I'm gonna stay.